Thank you, our lovely hostess, Mrs. Orly Uziel, who time and again opens up her home so selflessly and creates this beautiful environment. Thank you for this time and for all the times, Orly, for opening your home. I want to give a quick shout out to all the young people in here. We've got, a great crowd, and then we have elementary school and high school students. Can we please give her a Your name is Adina, and we have Elisheva, and we have Rivka Miriam, who are here, and they're not in school, and it's a hot summer night, and it's the teacher. And I just really want to give you guys a shout out. So today's class is going to be Le'ilui Nishmat, my grandma and grandpa, whose yard site is actually this week. My grandfather's yard site is today. Hana ben Malka, my grandmother was just a few days ago, Miriam Batuvia. It is L'Refuah Shlema. Bracha Bat Chaviva. רפואה שלמה רבקה בת זלפה, לזכות אריה בן אברהם. So I'm going to do some...
רצ'ל רחל בת לולו.
רצ'ל רחל בת לולו.
יאיר יונה צבי בן יוחנן.
יאיר יונה צבי בן יוחנן. Everybody should have a רפואה שלמה שלמה. Something today, which I don't usually do. And I'm going to start with a story. And the story begins about 120 years ago, somewhere in a very small village along the Silk Road in Central Asia, where there lived a young woman. Her name was Dvorah, and she was very happily married to her husband, and very eagerly awaiting to build a young Jewish family. And she waited a year and 2 and 3, and she did not have any children. And she waited 4 and 5 and 6, and she did not have children. And she started to get nervous. It's a small village in Central Asia. There are no fertility clinics. There are no fertility doctors. It's whatever your grandma tells you to do. Eat more chicken, eat more lamb fat, I don't know, okay? And nothing was working. And so she kind of hinted to her very loving husband, maybe you'll have more luck with somebody else. And he said, no, I don't think they said I love you in those days in that part of the world, but he said some equivalent of that, okay? He said, I'm never leaving you. She said, I think I'm holding you back. I think there's maybe something, maybe you could start a family with somebody else. He said, don't even think about it. You're 7, you're 8, you're 9. It's a lot of her, fertility years that, biological clock is ticking, as they say. And she said, please go start a family with somebody else. He said, I won't hear of it. Year 10, we know halakha starts to say, you're allowed to separate already to start a new family. She urges him, and she says, please do it. Please go start a family. You'll have children. You can do it. And with a lot of reluctance and resistance, he listens to her, and he goes and he separates, he divorces her, and he marries somebody else, and he starts a family. And she's watching all this for the entire year as the new wife is having, child after child, and with great happiness that, thank God, my loving husband is able to do this, and thank God I'm not stopping him. And so she resolved, and so she told God one day, Hashem, I'm not doing this again. I know I've got a few years ahead of me fertility, but I'm not doing it because, been there, done that. I don't think I'm able to have children. I don't want to do this to somebody else. And, that's what she said. So now take your camera off of this young woman called, what's her name? Good. And travel up further along the Silk Road to a different village, also a small village, where there is a very pious family. His name is Nelia. Her name I don't remember. And he has a small family. He has 2 little children, and his wife just had a newborn baby, a few days old, maybe 10 days old, something like that. His wife just gave birth. And within a few days of his wife having given birth, they were kind of like crusaders, but it's not Europe, so they don't call them crusaders. They were like Muslim crusaders, like these marauders who would burst into a city, and they didn't necessarily want to loot Jewish plunder like, your gold and silver. They just wanted Jewish blood. So these, called the Muslim crusaders, they burst into his house, right? Wife just had a newborn baby, and they go for the husband, and they start hitting him and hitting him and hitting him and hitting him with some stick, and they cracked his skull. Now this young woman who's carrying her 10-day-old baby thought they killed her husband. He's still alive, but his skull is cracked open. So she had a heart attack from all that stress. This is a postpartum woman. She had a heart attack, and she never got out of it. She died within the week she passed away. So now you've got this young man, Neria, father of 3 children, one of them being a couple of days old, and 2 little orphans, 3 little orphans, and he's beside himself. He doesn't know what to do. He has to piece the pieces of his skull, the pieces of his life, his children back together. He just buried his wife. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And his father-in-law, right, her father, whose name was Sion, he said to his son-in-law, "You have to remarry. I know it's my daughter, who I just lost. You gotta remarry. Like ASAP. Like you're not waiting a year. You gotta remarry." And he said, "No, I can't remarry. My life is falling apart. I'm not remarrying." And this man who just lost his daughter, he says to his son-in-law, Neria, "You must remarry." And there was so much reluctance on his part. He said, "You know what, I'm going to take matters into my own hands." And he traveled to the nearby village, and he asked the rabbi over there, "Rabbi, I'm looking for a young woman to marry my son-in-law." He asked me. So the rabbi says, "Well, I don't really have any bachelorettes that would, marry him, but I do have one woman, but she can't really have children, or so it seems." He says, "Perfect! He's got 3 kids. It's a perfect fit." So they went to her and they asked her, will you consider to meet him? Will you consider to see him?" And she said, no, I don't want to get married. Leave me alone. I don't want. And the rabbi pressed her and said, "Please, just meet the family. Just meet the children. Just meet them." And out of tremendous respect for the rabbi and for this very honorable man who came, and her father also encouraged her, she said, "Fine, I'll travel to the village." She took her brother along because it's not modest to go alone to another village. She took her brother along, and she entered, it was a few mile ride. It's 120 years ago. They probably went by donkey or horse, I don't know. And she entered the home. Now you can imagine the scene. He's recovering from his skull, right, thing. And you've got 2, rambunctious little kids running around. A new woman is coming in. You've got a little baby who's crying. Who's been taking care of this baby? No Similac, no Enfamil, no Materna. What are you going to give the kid? Cow's milk? You kill the kid. You can't give cow's milk. It's good for a baby cow. It's not good for a baby human. Who's feeding this kid? Who? A wet nurse? I don't think he had that much money. The neighbors, they took pity. They knocked on the door. "I have extra milk. Come. I have extra milk. Come." So little by little, the kid was always crying, always hungry. So here this lady comes into the house. Baby is crying. Now what does every young woman, when she hears the baby crying, what does she do? "You want me to help out?" "Yeah, sure, you did." So she held the baby. He's, rooting reflex, is that what they call it? He starts to look for some place to nurse. She's like, "I can't nurse this kid. I got nothing." So she looks around. She takes in her environment. She says, "Excuse me, I'll be right back." She goes over to the corner with a baby in her hand. She just met this baby 30 seconds ago. She turns around very discreetly. She looks up. She says, "Hashem, I know what I have to do, but you do what you have to do. Hashem, I'll marry him. He's a good man. It's a good family, Hashem. I told you I'll never do it. I'll do it, Hashem. I'll marry him. But you gotta give me milk. Like now. I'll nurse the baby. I'll raise him as my own. I'll marry the man. I'll start a family, Hashem. I know you're there. You do what you have to do. Give me milk. I'll do what I have to do. I'll nurse him." She let down. You know what let down is? Some of you know, some of you don't know let down. When you look, you feel the milk coming down and you're bursting and you put the baby. She let down. Now, mind you, she never had a baby. It's not like, sometimes a woman who's already had a baby, you could say you can induce lactation with old machines. I don't know what. I once know somebody, she did it. She was black and blue for 2 months. But she never had a baby. She never had a baby. And the milk came instantly, and she nursed and nursed. She married him. Here's the PS to the story. The PS to the story is that I owe my life to this woman because she is my great-grandmother. Dvorah. She's my great-grandmother. She ended up marrying, we call him grandfather Neria. They together had 10 children. One of them is my grandma. She met her. She met my grandma. She's like Donald Trump in a woman, right? She met my grandmother when she came to my wedding. My grandma is one of the 10 children of this miracle woman who made milk out of nowhere. Why am I telling you this story? This is the ring that I got from my grandma's ring. This is one of the 10 miracle babies that she ended up having after she agreed to marry him. Because it's been, I actually counted before I came, 1,953 years that we are in this exile. Anybody get a different number? Like the second temple was destroyed in the year 70, right? And we're now 2023, right? That's like 1,950. It's been 1,953 years that we are in exile. And the only way that we manage is through miracles. And so I just told you my miracle story. This is why I'm here. Had she not gone to the corner with that screaming infant and said what she said, I wouldn't be here today. Orly would have had to find somebody else. I wouldn't be here today. But she said, Hashem, I know you could do anything, so give me milk. So what if you can make water come from a rock for 40 years, you can make food from good to the sky, so you can give me milk. I never saw that. It's like, it's not beyond you. Therefore, says the Ramban, quoting the Rambam, actually of this past week's Parsha, which is where I gave this class to begin with, this past Shabbat. And a couple of you are here, even though you are the class, but I'll try to make a different joke, so it should not be. Says the Rambam, in this past week's Parsha, do you know why in the Parsha it's like the boring part where it says all the 42 journeys that the Jews traveled in 40 years in the desert? They went from Egypt to here, to here, to here, to here, to here, and you're like, who cares? Like, I learned this all in Sefer Shmot. Why in Sefer Dvarim it has to repeat all the 42 Masaot, Parshat Masa'eh, the 42 travelings of the Jewish people. Says the Rambam, being quoted by the Ramban, אמר, הוא צריך לזכור הצורך לזכור המסעים גדול מאוד. It is so important to write down everywhere where the Jewish people traveled, all the 42 travelings. כי הניסים והאותות הנעשות הם אמיתיות לכל רואיהם. Because, when a miracle happens, it's like, wow, to the person who witnessed the miracle. They could say, wow, I saw Mrs. Yitzchak, her grandmother is one of the 10 miracle babies that was born. To Savta Dvorah, who got milk. When you see it, it's like, wow, yeah? But what happens, aval be'atid, as time tick-tockles, the clock goes on, hadvarim, yu hadvarim b'shmuah. All that's left of these miracle stories is hearsay. And you hear these miracle stories and like, yeah, whatever, nah, I don't think that happened. And for 40 years, the Jewish people survived miraculously. Open miracles that you could see with your own eye. But because Hashem knows, that what's going to happen to these miracles is what happens to all history. What happens to all history? You don't believe it. Nah, it didn't really happen like that. Probably Mrs. Yitzchak's great-grandmother, she had a little bit of a hormonal imbalance. She ate too much flax seeds. She got I don't know what makes milk. Brewer's yeast, okay, I don't know. Beer, Coca-Cola, what? Fenugreek. Fenugreek. I see what Parsha here. She ate too much fenugreek, okay? And that's why she didn't eat fenugreek. It wasn't because she had too much, it wasn't like that. Or maybe you would say, well, the Jewish people, they survived for 40 years in the desert. Haya karov min hayishuv. They lived next to civilization. They didn't live next to London, New York, Tel Aviv. They were in the desert for 40 years. Or maybe people will say, probably the Jewish people for 40 years in the desert, they ate kale. You know kale, it grows in the desert. No, it doesn't. I can barely grow kale in my backyard. I tried, it doesn't go. Okay, maybe they ate carrots. No, they didn't eat carrots and they didn't eat kale. It was a miracle. Therefore, says the Rambam, חזק אלה האותות כולם בזיכרון המסעות. It's so important to list all the steps that were made along the way to tell you your story is a miracle. Your journeys are a miracle. Find your miracle. Ask your parents. Ask your grandparents. It's your story. Many of us, we know our stories. You're a miracle. The way that you got here. It's 1,953 years of miracles. That was introduction number 1. Now, let's go into the elevator. Push the down button and go way beneath street level. And then we'll go into the elevator again and go even lower and lower and lower beneath street level. If you get nauseous, I don't know how to help you. Today we are going to explore a very interesting topic. We are going to open up an Or HaChaim HaKadosh, Rabbi Chaim Ben Attar, also on this past week's Parsha. And he's going to take a very interesting kind of like mystical Kabbalistic view on these 42 journeys that the Jewish people made in the Midbar. Here we go. Lama bachar hakatuv limnot hamasa'ot. Same question that Ramban just asked. Why do we have to list the 42 travelings? We just heard the Ramban's answer. Because it's a miracle. You got to know your miracles. You got to know who you are. You got to know your past. You got to know how you got here. And you got to know you're a miracle. That we said. Now comes in the Or HaChaim, and he's going to ask the same question, give a completely different answer. From the elevator. Now, I'm going to teach it to you. You are not to understand it. You are not to understand anything. You are only to hear and not to understand. If you understand, you're switching places with me. Says the Or HaChaim. Oh, first we're going to do something a little bit technical, and then I'm going to get mystical. So Or HaChaim makes this question even worse by asking the following. When the Torah lists the 42 travelings, it actually doesn't call them the 42 stops. It calls them the 42 journeys. Okay? You know, like when you go on a family vacation, so first you go peach picking, and then you go to a corn maze, and then you go kayaking. Okay? Right? More or less? That's what people do? No? What do you guys do?
That's fine.
More exactly. So when you remember this, or when you make a scrapbook, you don't say, oh, remember when we were driving from peach picking to corn maze? Who cares about the ride? You ate Cheerios and made the car dirty. You don't remember that. You don't say, oh, do you remember when we went from corn maze to kayak? You don't care about the ride in between. Who cares about that? That's when you have to pull a lot of money for gas. You don't care about. What you care about is, remember we went peach picking, remember we went kayaking, remember you got lost in the corn maze. But that's not what the Torah is emphasizing. The Torah is emphasizing not point A, point B, point C, אלא מסעי. מה זה מסע? מסע. מסע. The journey. The Torah says, remember when you traveled from point A to point B? Oh, who cares? Remember when you traveled from point B to point C? I don't know, maybe it's so important. Says the Or HaChaim. Why not El Chanayot? These were the 42 stops. It doesn't say stops. It says these were the 42 journeys. That is how he begins his question. Achen yitba'er. And now this is where you're not allowed to understand anything, only to hear, and later you maybe will understand. Al Pi, we're going to learn the answer to this question, Divrei Anshe Emet, according to the Kabbalistic sages. Actually, the Arizal's Askara is today. Oh, that's why you lit a candle. Amazing. Shehalichot Yisrael b'midbar, the travelings of the Jewish people in the desert, Haita, It was for the purpose of, I'm going to say it now, you are not to understand. Levarer nitzotzei hakedusha. To draw out holy sparks. Huh? I told you not to understand. The reason for the 42 journeys of the Jewish people is for the purpose of retrieving, drawing out, levarer, like borer, to select the nitzotzei hakedusha, the sparks of holiness. What sparks? What sparks? Where did the sparks come from? What are they doing in the desert? She'anas ish habli'al, that the wicked one captured. Who's the wicked one? Hasatan. You are not to understand, only to hear. So the Satan, okay, the Yetzer Hara, the Satan, the force of evil, the angel that's in charge of all evil in the world, whereas a separate class, we're not talking about him, I'm just kind of making mention of him here. He captured holy sparks. What this means we'll say soon. I'm just kind of laying down the structure and then we're going to analyze it a little bit. What about him? Why is he in the desert and why is he gobbling up holy sparks? HaChoneh bamidbar hashamem. The place of the Satan is the wilderness. Why is the wilderness so scary? There's a reason you're scared when you go to the desert. There's a reason you're scared when you get lost in the wilderness, not when you get lost on Sacramento. Why are you so scared when you're lost in the wilderness? There's a reason for it, because She'anas ishabial hachona b'midbar, because the Satan lives in the midbar. It's a good place for him, says the Or HaChaim, because it's a place of nachash, saraf, ve'akrab. It's a place of snakes and of scorpions, of very deadly, lethal things. V'darchu sham adat Hashem, and the Jewish people had to step foot in the desert for 40 years, lehotzi bol'o mipiv, to extract from his mouth what he swallowed. Who swallowed? Somebody need a Heimlich maneuver. Who swallowed something? Don't understand, just get the framework. Satan, right, force of evil, swallowing up some holy sparks. What it means we'll talk about soon, where the sparks come from. And the Jewish people for 40 years had to extract something, had to extract these whole, how do they extract? The spiritual Heimlich maneuver to extract these holy sparks from the Satan who lives in the wilderness is simply by stepping foot, by walking through the desert where he lives. V'hu hatam shayu Yisrael chonim b'makom echad shana, and that is the reason why in some place the Jewish people, they lived there for like a year, right, in the desert for 40 years. Some places they stopped for 1 year, and some places, ובמקום אחר 12 שעות. And another place, they stayed for 12 hours. You know, you park in one place, by the time it's dinner time, you already pick up shop and you go elsewhere. And in some place, you park and you're there for 365 years. Says the Or HaChaim, based on what calculation did Hashem decide where you're going to hang out for 12 hours in the desert for 40 years, when the Jews were in the desert for 40 years, and where you're going to be for 1 year? Says the Or HaChaim, hu kefi ma shetzarich lebiruv hanitzotzot. This was done according to the necessary length of time that the Jews had to stay there to vacuum out, borer, to draw out, to select the holy sparks that were existing in that particular place. Moreover, says the Or HaChaim, in some cases, all the Jews had to do was not even to like settle there and like, you know, pitch their tents. All they had to do was walk through. And that was enough for the holy sparks to kind of attach themselves and be attracted to the Jewish people. If I were to kind of make this, to illustrate it, you know kids, they have this Etch-a-Sketch, these magnet games. You know these magnet games? You've got this like magnetic powder, okay? And then you've got this like magnetic wand or like a stick of sorts, yeah? And then you put it on the board and all these little powdery pieces of magnets, okay, they're like, okay, they go to this magnet stick. And then how do you make a picture? You don't just leave the magnet stick on the board. You have to move the stick. You have to move the wand. And what happens to all the little powdery sparks of magnet that are on the board? What happens? They magnetically are attracted to that big piece of magnet, that stick, that one, and they follow it. And you cannot separate that magnet powder, let's call them sparks, to that big magnet. A little bit further on, the Or HaChaim is going to refer to magnet. And he's going to say the reason Hashem created magnet in the world is to have like a physical analog for the spiritual phenomenon of having a spark of holiness like attract itself to this powerhouse of magnet and then cling to it and go and follow wherever it goes. Says the Or HaChaim. That's why the 42 stops are referred to not by their stops, but when they start to move. Because that's when the magic happens. The magic of the Etch-a-Sketch or that magnet toy is not when you put the magnet zip, right, on the board. That's just when the little sparks of magnet kind of, come. The magic happens. They follow you. They leave their point A when the wand starts to move. That's when the magic happens. That's why the parsha is called Masa'eh. The punchline is on when the Jewish people started to travel. Because that's when the holy sparks, which were trapped in that particular geographic location, attach themselves and exit, were extricated from where they were swallowed up in the mouth of the Satan. More about that in a minute. I just want you to get the framework. When the Jews would start to travel, imahem, because these holy sparks, they are holy. In a moment we'll learn what makes them holy, how did they get there. So, it's like, right? It is attracted to like. And so these holy sparks were attracted to the Jewish people. And like a holy thing that says, oh, I want to be attracted to you because I found like you and I, we have something in common. And they were attracted to the Jews. And lo bizman hachanaya, that didn't necessarily happen when the Jews camped there. They couldn't really extricate the sparks until they started to move. Now the Or HaChaim adds in a PS here, had the Jews not sinned, I'm not sure if it's Chet HaEgel or Chet HaMeraglim, I should have checked up this past week. Right? I had a whole week to check it out. I didn't. The Or HaChaim says, had the Jews not sinned, so either it's the sin of the golden calf or it's the sin of the spice, they would not have had to go to these 42 stops. Their magnetic force would have been so dynamite and so strong that they could have remained in one place and all the holy sparks would have kind of found themselves to where the Jewish people were. Like when you have a really strong magnet and all your nuts and bolts and screws and little tiny watch batteries, and paper clips, they attach themselves to the magnet. The Jews would not have to travel anywhere. They could have done it all remaining in one place. Continues the Or HaChaim. The first of the 42 stops, those of you who know the stops, is Ramses. That's in Egypt, okay? The first of the 42 stops was in Egypt. And we were there not for 12 hours and not for 1 year. We were there for, how long? 210 years. So here's where the Or HaChaim gives a little bit of understanding of why we had to be in Egypt for 210 years and why it hurts so much. Explains the Or HaChaim. There are entities. Nothing in the world is so one-dimensional that it's like all good or all bad, right? Everything is like either essentially good with a little salt and pepper of bad, or essentially bad with a little salt and pepper sprinkling of good, okay? So says the Or HaChaim, when these two entities meet, something which is essentially good with a little sprinkling of impurities, and something which is essentially evil with a sprinkling of good, what happens is like magnet, the little bit of good that's attached to the thing that's essentially evil will disattach itself and go to the thing that's essentially good when you put the two together, like magnet. And if there's a little bit of sprinkling of salt and pepper of not good, of impurities on the thing that's essentially good, and it comes face to face with evil, then the little bit of good gets extracted and goes onto the thing that's evil. Now the way that relationship happens, yeah, something explodes, something cracks up, says the Or HaChaim, it's secretly referring to that outer, to that sprinkling of not good, of the impurities that were upon us, that cracked off and went upon the Egyptians. And when that happens, then the Egyptians, they have essentially no good left in them. And that is how, by the way, in the plague of the firstborn, when all the firstborn died, it's not that they suddenly got COVID or they suddenly got the Black Plague. They didn't get sick. It's just that there was not one speck of good left because it was sucked out of them in this mystical thing that we are describing. So when there's nothing good left in a person, in the case of the firstborn and the Egyptians, then they all, no longer lived. Okay. Od Yirmos, another secret hint in this framework that we are describing. Ready? Od Yirmos, another secret hint. Ki Anfei HaKedusha nitpazru ba'olam. Let's try to understand a little bit deeper what we've been describing right now. Where do these holy sparks come from? What are they even? What they are is Anfei HaKedusha. Hashem is the Ein Sof. Hashem is the infinite. To call him Kadosh is the only thing we can call him. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. What else are you going to call him? There's no word in the dictionary that you can use for Hashem. So what we call him is Kadosh, right? We call him, you want to call it holy? I don't know. Kadosh. It's the only thing we can say about Hashem, that he's Kadosh. So Hashem, who is all Kadosh, yeah, that Kedusha of Hashem's, says the Or HaChaim, Anfei HaKedusha nitpazru ba'olam. Hashem's Kedusha was spread all over the world. I'm going to call it holiness for lack of a better word. Hashem's Kedusha, not holiness, whatever, is spread all over the world. In Kabbalistic terms, that's what happened when Adam HaRishon ate from the tree of knowledge. When Adam HaRishon ate from the tree of knowledge, which we're going to talk a little bit more about in a couple of minutes, something happened. And rather than Kedusha being easily identifiable, easily understandable, it's right there, instead of it being kind of all easily identifiable, it fizzled and spread all over the world, like offshoots that were scattered everywhere. ואין מציאות להם להתברר זולת באמצעות ישראל. It is only the Jewish people who have the ability to return those holy sparks, we're going to call them now, back to their source. That wasn't the original plan. The original plan was not to have only one family or one group of people whose job it is to be scattered all over the world and, encounter people, encounter places, encounter circumstances, encounter situations. I'm going to open that up in a moment, kind of throwing something out to you. I'm going to open it up in a moment. But after the first couple of generations, and after the generation of the flood, and the generation of Migdal Babel, the generation of dispersion, that job, which was supposed to be upon all mankind, it was not supposed to be only upon the Jews. But that didn't work. Why? You have to look at the beginning of Bereshit, of Genesis. Plan B is that it is only going to be the reality that the Jewish people, through their experiences, and I'm going to speak in a moment what it means through their experiences, ויותר באמצעות עסק התורה, especially when they are engaged in learning Torah. I just dropped a second bombshell. The first bombshell I told you is that the way to extract these holy sparks when you are in exile is through suffering. Right? Now the Or HaChaim is saying, that's one way. There's another way. Simply learning Torah. Learning Torah. It has the power. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to magnet that draws. מה זה שואב? מה זה שואב? שואב. Draw, like a vacuum, yeah? Like it vacuums. ניצוציה במקום שהם. Learning Torah has the power to draw these holy sparks which Hashem scattered all over the world back to its original source. ואותם ניצוצי הקדושה, גם להם יקרא סגולה. P.S. A nickname for the holy sparks is also called Segula. Segula, it's like the Jewish people are called Am Segula. Segula also means, says the Or HaChaim, a treasure, like diamonds that are scattered all over the world. The Jewish people are like diamonds that are scattered all over the world that can interact and draw magnetically these holy sparks throughout the world and return them. וזה טעם פיזור ישראל בארבע רוחות העולם. This is the reason why the Jewish people were scattered all over the world. Let's do a quick survey. It's going to take like a minute or two. Let's just kind of like call out a country that you are from, okay? Like, I'm trying to understand for the past a lot of years. Like, where am I from? I don't know. That's a loaded question. But I grew up for 10 years of my life in Germany, in West Berlin. You know, like where Hitler made his final solution, right? And Wannsee? I used to feed the ducks over there. Hello? Hello? My birthday parties, they were in Burger King and McDonald's with Ronald McDonald. I didn't eat kosher food one time in the first 10 years of my life. Only on Pesach we had kosher food. I don't know. Thank God they brought something. Like, hello? And then when I left, that's when the Berlin Wall broke. The Berlin Wall, I used to do barbecue over there. That was the barbecues of a lifetime. We used to play by the Berlin Wall. We visited the Reichstag, which is where they, drafted all the plans for the concentration camps. And like, that's why I couldn't grow up in Chicago like normal people. Let's quickly go around the room. Everybody throw out a country. Something? Germany.
Israel.
Galicia.
Egypt.
Egypt. In your country, Egypt.
My grandparents came from Lithuania.
Lithuania.
Well, it was the grandparents. If it's one
Doesn't matter. Whatever.
Okay.
Turkey.
Turkey.
Russia, Poland.
Russia, Poland.
Russia.
Russia.
London.
London.
Virginia.
Got it.
I born in Mexico, but I grew up in Texas.
Mexico.
Chicago.
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 Morocco.
Chicago.
Chicago. Same.
Israel. Israel.
Iraq.
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 Chicago.
Israel.
New York.
Oklahoma.
I got a lot of wows. Oklahoma. Mrs. Montrose.
Los Angeles. Israel.
Washington.
Argentina.
Argentina.
Go ahead. I throw out some names.
Colombia.
Colombia.
Chicago.
Chicago.
Israel.
Did we get everyone?
Yeah.
Like, did we just go like halfway around the globe and back? Like, did we miss any continent? Almost, not really. Huh?
Chile.
Oh, wow, as a guess, South America, Chile and Argentina. Chile. Did we miss anything? Says the Or HaChaim, Ze Ta'am. That's why you're not all from the same place. This is the reason why the Jewish people are scattered in exile in the four corners of the earth. L'chazor achar ha'segula, to gather diamonds, to go in these far out places with your unique personality and your unique ability and your unique magnet, and to draw these holy sparks to you and to redeem them. But it wasn't always like this. It wasn't always like this, says the Or HaChaim. Before Adam in the Garden of Eden ate from the Etz Hada'at, before he ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil knowledge. What could be evil knowledge? What kind of knowledge? where they were very clearly defined. Good was good and bad was bad. Today it's not like that. Today something looks so good and so wonderful. It is so rotten. It is so poisonous. It's like, don't touch it, but it's so good and it's so lovely and it's so wonderful and it's so inclusive and it's so like that. It's rotten, but it looks so good. It sounds so good and everybody says it's good. It's not good. And you can have something that looks so mean. It looks so cold. It looks so bad. It looks so strict. It looks so, it's the best thing for you, but it's so severe and how could this be good? How could this be good? How could this plan? How could this all, it's magic. It's the best thing for you. So before Adam ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, it was clearly defined. But when he ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, what happened? What happened is that there was like this explosion, and this is where the Anfei HaKdusha, the branches that emanated from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, where he relates to us in the world, they just scattered everywhere. And now it's like, it looks so good, and it's poison to the core, and it looks so bad, and it's the best medicine for you. It's your medicine, it's so good for you. But you look at it, it doesn't look like anything. But that's your salvation. But it's so tricky, and especially since the bad, it looks so tempting and so glitzy and so sparkly, and the thing that's so good looks so boring and so harsh and so bad and so black and white, and there is such a confusion, and the way to now do the work of rectifying and finding all the sparks of good. A, we said, is to encounter in exile difficulties, and that will do the job. Learning Torah wherever you are, and that will do the job. In fact, that's why, says the Or HaChaim, that's why there were two aspects to exile. A was the suffering, and B was just the time that you spent there. You know, we did spend 210 years in Egypt, but we only suffered, not for 210. We did not suffer for 210. We suffered for 206? 209? Huh? 86. Right. So either like the worst suffering was for 86 years, but like the 10 plagues, that was the last year. We didn't suffer. It was like pretty good. Okay? So like one is the suffering, and the other one is tick-tock goes the clock. You just gotta be there. You just gotta be there. So there's two aspects to exile. You just gotta be there. That's one. Or you gotta, you know, encounter some hardships and difficulties, and that's two. Now, we spoke a little bit about the first part of the title, the 42 journeys. We didn't speak about the second part of the title, the 50 gates. In that beautiful flyer that Lisa so beautifully made for us in some short notes. The Or HaChaim is now going to ask another question, which is going to enter the topic of the 50 gates. Now, you should ask, אם תאמר, says the Or HaChaim, you should ask, מה בכך אם היה השם גואל אותם קודם זמן זה? Big deal if Hashem would have taken us out after 209 years, 208, like, whatever, like Hashem, like, like, enough is enough. Why couldn't Hashem, what would have gone wrong, says the Or HaChaim, if Hashem would have redeemed us before the set time? למה השם הוציא אותם בזיבולה בטרייתא? Why did Hashem take them out in the last minute? Like the last minute, it says. You know the story, their bread didn't rise, they ate matzah, it was cooking on their shoulder, all that. Like, why did he have to take us out in the last moment? בזמן שאם היו מתעכבים קצת היו נלכדים. Those of you who know the story, we know that had they stayed even a moment longer, we would have been irredeemable. We would have been trapped because we would have slipped into the 50th gate. Huh? How did they know about the title? 50th gate. So we know that there's something called the Nun Sharei Tumah, the 50 gates of impurity. What does that mean? We'll talk about it soon. I want to build a framework, and then once we have the framework, we'll see what it is. There are 50 gates of impurity. 49 gates, again, what it is, we're going to say in a moment. 49 gates of impurity, the Jews had tumbled down, okay, and they were still redeemable. And had they remained a moment longer, they would have tumbled into the 50th gate of impurity, and that's the point of no return. For them, not for us, for them. For them, they would have been irredeemable had they gone down there. And that's what it says, "Ad shehutzrach lomar velo yachlu lehitmahameha." The Jews could not delay, they could not tarry. Our exile is the opposite. Ve'af al pi she'itmameya, even though it takes so long. Our exile will tarry, will take long. But the Egyptian exile, once it was time, boom! Hashem should have taken them out in style. With a little bit of time to spare. You know, powder your nose, something, okay? Why such a rush? Answers the Ohr HaChaim. Hine, lema shekadam lanu. Based on everything we said, Ikar hagadlut hu levarer hanitzotzot. The whole point of exile, including the Egyptian exile, guys with me? We're almost at the punchline, is to extract those sparks. Shenitmeu bechamishim sha'arei tum'ah. Now he's opening up another dimension. The sparks are encased, not just in the mouth of the Satan. That's what we called it up until now. Now we're calling it, we're giving it different vocabulary. We're calling it 50 gates of impurity. Now, im haya motziam kodem, had Hashem taken the Jews out, you know, when they were like in the 47th gate of impurity or the 48th gate of impurity, they would have lost out on something. What? Just like there's 50 gates of Tum'ah, there's also Nun Sha'arei Binah. There's 50 gates of wisdom. Who had, not all 50, 49? Moshe Rabbeinu. When he went up on Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, he got 49. I'll give you a little example of what that would feel like if you had some of these 49 gates of wisdom, what you would be able to do. There's 50 gates of Tum'ah, and there's Nun Sha'arei Tum'ah, and there's 50 gates of wisdom, Nun Sha'arei Binah. And if you encounter one of these gates of impurity, what does that mean to encounter a gate of impurity? It means it's a spiritual challenge. That's what it is. The 50 gates of impurity are a spiritual challenge. And what you need to do when you don't put yourself in that gate, Hashem puts you there. When Hashem puts you in that gate, you got to fight the good fight. You got to fight the good fight. You got to encounter that temptation, whatever that temptation is. It could be temptation of any sort. Is there a lack of temptation in the world? It could be anger. It could be lack of emunah, lack of faith. It could be not seeing God. It could be, anything that we are struggling with. Anything that we are struggling with. Any kind of spiritual challenge, right? Having faith that Hashem is going to pull through for you. Getting angry all the time because nothing is working your way, which is, of course, a reflection of lack of emunah. Working on generosity, working on being, whatever spiritual challenge you encounter, that's one of the 50 gates of impurity. When you encounter that, something else can open up for the Jewish people. Right? For every gate of impurity, there's a gate of Binah that can open up for us as a nation. So the only way I can give you this is if you fight the good fight on this. So if I want you to have 49 for the next 3,000 years, you gotta fight the good fight, my children. You gotta be in Egypt for 210 years. You just gotta encounter that, okay? Now the 50th level of impurity, they could not have ever encountered, because, says the Ohr HaChaim, what they did not have is the Torah. You can only surpass and encounter and meet face to face the 50th gate if you have in your pocket the Torah. It's the only thing that's going to get you out of the 50th gate. Let's swallow that for a moment before we go a little bit further. As hayu mafsidim berur hachelek hahu. So had Hashem let them stay in Egypt for a little bit longer? Impossible. They don't have the Torah. Had he taken them out when they were like on the 42nd gate, on the 43rd, even on the 48th, they would have lost out on the 48, 49 gates of wisdom, which Moshe Rabbeinu had. And I'm going to tell you a little bit of what that would be like. Just as there are 50 gates of Tumah, there are 50 gates of Bina. So Moshe Rabbeinu had all 49 except for the last one. And the Ramban, which I didn't photocopy, he explains, here's what that could be like. So like, Domen, Tzomech, Chai, Medaber. We know we have inanimate objects, we have vegetation, we have animals, we have people. It's like different levels of existence. A person who has the wisdom of the 49 levels can encounter every like inanimate object in the world and know its secret power and know its secret ability. What, mineral can do what? What mineral, I don't know, can heal, whether medicinally or like that. All the powers in the mineral world. A person who has a further level can encounter any kind of thing that grows, plants, herbs, and know the cure for any disease on the planet. For anything. Here, drink this tea and this is gone. Can you imagine such a life? Can you imagine this life? Going up a level, a person has the next level of understanding of the birds, of the animals, like Shlomo HaMelech had, right? Don't ask me how this works, but spiritually speaking, they communicate with each other, spiritually speaking, and if you know what they're saying, then you can kind of know what's going to happen within the next day, 2, 3, 4, 5, because the animals have a kind of, I don't know what this means. Okay. What I find really interesting is if you have another level of the 49 levels of Sha'arei Bina, you can look at a person, and just by looking at them, you know their life story. You know what they did. You know who they did it with. You know how much they did. I see you just gave charity. Wow, $382. Wow. Ooh, how do you know? It's all written. It's all written. And if you have that gate of wisdom, like the Arizal, whose yard set is today had, he could tell you who you are a reincarnation of, what you are here to fix, why you were born into the family that you were born into, what you messed up in your previous lifetime, and who you have to encounter, and what he knew everything, and also what you have to do to shuvah on. He could tell you everything, because that's the kind of knowledge. If you have a higher level, you understand what's going on with the angels. The angels, they come, the angels, they talk to you, the angels, they teach you. There's so many Jewish scholars who had Magidim, who had angels who came and who learned with them. This is just like a little glimpse of what the 49 gates of wisdom are. And maybe we don't have one person who has all 49, but the Jewish people throughout the generations have had great chachamim and great scholars. Again, the Arizal's yard set is today, who had these abilities, who were able to do that. The 50th one, ולצד שישראל לא נכנסו בשם ב50 שערי טומאה. We did not ever, in a previous exile, enter the 50th gate, לברר אותו, to draw out the sparks over there. לא השיגו בחינת הקודש, so we never kind of achieved that highest level, which is a prophecy. That's prophecy. That is like feeling God and hearing God speak to you, like they did not achieve that, the 50th gate. But Hashem promised us, watch this, that in the future, that's you guys, ישפיע בנו אל עליון תורת חיים שבשער ה50. Hashem will reveal to us the 50th gate. But you know the rule. You don't get it until you work through it. Yeah, you gotta sweat through it. You gotta cry through it. I don't know. You gotta work through it. You gotta learn through it. והשגתו, the way to achieve it, באמצעות הגלות. Exile, that's what you gotta do. You gotta be an exile. Join the club. ובפרט בגלות האחרון, especially the last exile. That's you guys. I don't know if you just understood what he revealed. But the Or Chaim HaKadosh just revealed to us that you are in the 50th gate. That's where you are. We always learned the Jews did not step into the 50th gate because they would have been irredeemable. You guys are you're in the 50th gate of impurity. Hello, take a look. And not here, out the window. Need you say more? בפרט בגלות האחרון, אנחנו משיגים הדבר. We will achieve that, because we will be swimming in the 50th gate. Don't kind of like miracles, what always happens to like history, it turns into hearsay. You know, it wasn't really such a miracle after all. When I asked my students in school to like, you know, like share their miracles, Mrs. Yitzhak, is that a miracle? And then they start saying it and the whole class is like, duh, of course that's a miracle. I go and suddenly everybody's miracles come out. Gotta know your miracles. Gotta know your miracles. The second thing we said is that there's a reason that we are scattered all over the world. It is the mission of the Jewish people. It is the mission of the Jewish people to bring back all the little holy sparks, the little diamonds that are gathered throughout the world. And that is why you will have like a magnetic pull, either to a certain geographic locale, or you'll have a magnetic pull to that which is going to help you become who you need to become. Where's that magnetic pull from? This is where it's from. It's not your imagination. It's not your imagination. There's a magnetic pull that's going to bring you to where you need to go, to what you need to do. Well, I don't know what I need to do. Yeah, we don't know what we need to do. Well, what you're going to need to do is either learn Torah or encounter spiritual challenge. Step up to the plate, rise to the occasion, overcome the challenge, realize that it's not going to be so black and white, right? The bad choices might seem like so exciting, and the good choices might seem so hard and so boring. But Baruch Hashem, we have the Torah to guide us in that. And so I'd like to leave you on that note. That I told you in the beginning of class, you are not to understand. And really, that's what I came to tell you today. You think you understand, we don't understand anything. Like, we don't understand anything. I don't understand my story. I don't know, I don't understand. We really we don't understand. It's okay, you don't have to understand. You just gotta walk the walk, pass the test, encounter the mountains, climb them, sweat through it, cry through it, know that Hashem is helping you through it, and you're not going to understand. Who understands? Understand. How come over here for 12 hours and over here for 1 year? Oh, I think it's because... Yeah, keep thinking it's not why. What I really want to tell you today is that maybe you are not going to understand. Maybe there's no logical reason why. But just, you know, keep going. Yeah. Pass the challenges, encounter them, and work through them. And that's how the work will get done. And hopefully this 1,953-year exile that we have gone through, hopefully with all our hard work and all our learning Torah and everything that we are really trying to do will very, very soon come full circle, and all the holy sparks will be redeemed. I want to add a caveat here. I was very nervous to speak about holy sparks because it's a very Kabbalistic topic, and it's a little bit dangerous topic also because a person could say, you know, like, oh, you know, here's a very impure thing, I'll encounter it, I'll overcome it, and no. It's like saying, like, I'll watch the movie, I'll skip all the dirty parts, and I'll just go to the lesson.
No.
I'll watch the History Channel, and I'll only like that, you know, skip all the... No, it doesn't go like that. You don't give yourself a challenge and say, I'll skip all the dirty pages, or I don't know what. Fill in the blank, okay? You could do it with any challenge. Hashem will put us in a situation of challenge. Like, we do not need to do that to ourselves. You do not need to look for a challenge and say, oh, you know, I could step into that mud because I will know. No, don't step into the mud. Go around the mud with all the fences that the halacha has created for us, right? Go around the danger, okay? Just like halacha will guide us every step of the way. But if it happens to be that a situation plucked into your lap, not in your control, okay, like, be strong, you know, then you gotta, like, tough it out, you gotta work the work, you gotta do it. But you don't give yourself a challenge and say, I will redeem the holy spark in your body. No, no, no. You follow halacha, right? You whatever the gedarim, boundaries that Hashem set for us, we follow those boundaries. Happens to be, right, somebody pushed you into a place, wherever now you're faced with something very, okay, then you have to fight, right? But we don't, God forbid, you know, jump into places where Hashem does not allow us to. That was a caveat.
Zach Baruch.
Okay, ladies, Chazak u'Baruch. Thank you so much. Now you can switch your legs.
Press this, Adar.
Kashe.